Good afternoon from Washington, D.C. International Master Oladapo Adu here. It's actually been a while. We put a video out. So today we're going to do a recap over the games that was played in the seventh round of the Chess Olympiad. Nigeria actually played against Zambia, yes, which it was a hard-fought game where I think we lost 2.5 to 1.5 points. So what I want to do here is to do a quick recap of all the games that happened during this round seven, just the Nigerian games. This is just for the Nigerian games. So yes, let's get started. The first game I'm going to go over is actually the game played between FIDE Master Bomo Kehia and IM Mwali Chitombo from Zambia. I have to praise Bomo for starting with game of the move e4. Why am I saying this? Bomo is a known c4 player, and Wally also is a known c4 player. So for you to play e4, something you're not used to against such an opponent, it's bravery, right? And I'm sure he must have prepared something, but I really have to praise him for this. So he played e4, game went e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. We have the Royal Lopez on the board. a6, bishop to a4, knight to f6, white castles, b5, bishop to b3, bishop to e7, d4. Now this is a very sharp line Bomo is employing, and I don't know, maybe the reason he played this line is to throw his opponent off. Like I said, Bomo is not a known e4 player, but like I said, I really salute his courage playing an opening he's not used to against such a field, such a strong player, because Mwali actually have very good reputation of being a very good player. So d4. Now, what's the point of d4? You know, the point of d4 is actually to start an attack immediately on the black's position. You know, black is here to castle here. Now, if the move d4, if captures, e5 is very strong. And now, black doesn't really have the time to keep his king safe yet because of the tempo being gained by the e-pawn on the knight on f6. So after the move d4, d6 is played. Now, in a game of chess, when you are behind in development, you don't want to open up the position, because if you do open up the position, you pretty much going to play into your opponent's hands. So d6 makes a lot of sense here. Why? Just trying to keep the position as close as possible. Captures on d4 in e5, captures back, knight captures, and I would actually have preferred a4 in this position. Just trying to make black play on both sides of the board. But knight takes was played. Pawn captures back, queen captures, bishop captures back, a4. Like I said, Bomo is playing so actively. So taking a pawn on e4 is not a big deal because we can always pick the pawn back with the move rook e1 and snap up the pawn on e5 because of the threat, you know, because of the file, open file on the black king. And of course, the simple threat is to capture pawn here, which cannot be captured back because of the rook on a8. So how does the IM meet this move? It plays rook to b8. Like I said again, when you have a position, you are behind in development, you don't want to open up the position, because if you do, you're pretty much going to play into your opponent's hands. So captures on b5, captures back. It plays bishop e3. I really like the way Bomo is playing here. The simple threat is, for example, if knight captures, bishop a7 is a very strong move. And if rook moves to a8, bishop here pretty much wins the game instantly. Bomo is playing pretty active here. Surprising for, you know, for someone not used to playing the move e4. So c6 is played here. Rook a7, very active play by Bomo. And normally, and I like the way he's playing here, because it's not just trying to, develop his pieces, protect his pawn. He's trying to unrattle black's position before black finds a way to put his pieces on the best squares. So he plays rook to a7, immediately threatening the weak pawn on f7. We have the bishop, and then we have the rook connecting that square. So what happens here? Bishop to b7, cutting off the communication between that two. But unfortunately for black, that's a very bad move, because after the move rook d1, white is just simply winning. It's an advantage for white. So knight c3 was played. Of course, the idea of knight c3 is not just to develop a piece, but also to protect the pawn that is under attack. Like I said, this pawn is never really going to be something white wants to worry about, because when you capture this pawn, it opens up the file against your king and also the pawn on e5. So knight c3 was played. Knight to d7. Knight d7 was based on the engine, was a very bad move. And now let's see, what's the point of knight d7? I feel probably with the move knight d7, bishop b6 might be possible, probably to force the rook away from the very active a square, a7 square. So after the move knight d7, white plays rook d1. Beautiful position by Bomo. Beautiful position. So after the move rook d1, rook to f8. Now this is a very unusual position. Why do I say that? It's rare where in a Royal Lopez you find a situation whereby you have the rook on b8 and f8. I have never seen this position before. So, and of course, this move is very important because the rook has to always keep an eye on the f7. You don't want to leave the defense of the f7 to the king. It's not always a good idea when your king is the one making the defending gesture in any kind of position. So let's always remember that. So after the move rook f8, knight takes pawn. This is beautiful. Knight takes pawn. Now, what's the point here? I really like this move. Now, in a game of chess, anytime you're ahead in development, you want to push, you want to stop your opponent from having any chance of getting into the game. I really like the knight takes pawn. Now, what's the point of knight takes pawn? Because the idea is to pretty much open up the black's king's position. What do I mean by that? For example, after knight takes, it takes back, bishop to d5. Now, the idea is to get rid of the bishop here on b7 and put pressure on the rook, on the knight on d7. And it's going to be a very difficult position for black to defend. And apart from the fact he has an attack, he has 2 pawns to go for that. So let's see how the game continued here. Bishop to b6 was played. Rook takes b7. Immediately the opponent says, you know what, I'm just going to give you the piece back. I don't want no piece or no part of you. So rook takes b7, bishop takes, or rook takes back, bishop takes b7, takes on e3, and bishop b5. Very nice intermezzo move. Very nice intermezzo, exploiting the pin on the knight on d7. I have to say this, Bomo has been playing, this game has been really well. It's almost as if it's an engine playing because of the accuracy and the timing of his move. It's very impressive. So bishop to c6 was played, and bishop to d4, blocking the rook from connecting with the bishop on c6. So c3, very important move. King moves, takes on d4, takes back, rook takes on d4. So let us see what white has, and let us see what black has after all the back and forth. White has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns to black's 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns. So that's advantage white. White has a very active rook compared to black's passive rook. I'm going to say another advantage white. White has a bishop against a knight. Now look at this position. It's an open position. Another advantage white. So all things being equal, this game should be a 1 position for white. So let us see how white is able to milk his advantage. Let us see how white was able to get something out of this position. So the game continued. Knight to c5, a4, b4. Very important move. Taking the pawn is not such a big deal because we can always bring the rook to b8. The bishop moves back. and then we get the pawn back. So that's never such a big deal. And another thing we have to also notice is once the game ends up being there's one part of the board, then it's not such a big deal for the person on the bishop any longer. So let's continue. Knight move to e6, hitting the bishop, rook on d4, check, king moves, rook b7. Wow, beautiful, beautiful. Nice execution by Bomo. He's just taking his time to really make sure black has no chances at all. Rook attacks the bishop, rook protects the bishop. King moves to e5, g3. What's the point of g3? f4 is coming. And also, by moving the pawn to g3, you're creating a loft. Let's keep going. Knight to d4, bishop d5. Now, that's not such a good move here. A better move would have been to play the move f4 to kick the king back furthermore. f4 would have been a good move. So after the move bishop to d5, this is where the move pretty much threw away most of his advantage. Yes, what do I mean by that? Because prior to the move bishop to d5, the engine said he had about 2.5 plus 2.5. That's a big deal. That should be a one position for him. So, and I think it was just trying to make sure his opponent had absolutely nothing. But sometimes the one thing about chess is give and take. You're not going to get it all. There are some you want to get, there's some you want to let go. So bishop d5, g5, very good move, stopping the pawn push. Now we cannot go for f4 because it takes, we take, now we're down a pawn. But he could always have done the move f4, and for example, the king moves back, and then we just have bishop d5. Oh, we could even do, let's see, we have bishop d5. Yeah, bishop d5, just pretty much just crush it. Like I said, this pawn majority is going to win the pawn here. This is just crushing. So let's keep going. So knight d4, bishop d5, g5, bishop takes on f7, rook check. Now, another thing I have to add here, I'm trying to move fast because I have to review the other games. Another thing I'm trying to add here is the move rook to c1 was a bad move by black. I think a better move would have been to move. Let's see. Yeah, king takes e4 was a good move, and yeah, king takes e4 was a good move. And you know, black has to be really careful because if the king goes all the way to that square, mate is going to be threatened here. So rook to c1, rook to c1, check. King moves up to g2, only move. And then we have rook to b1. Rook to b1. Ensuring that if he goes the b pawn, he's going to get back by taking white's b pawn as well. So rook moves to b8. And after a couple of moves, we found ourselves in an ending where we have a bishop against, we have a bishop and rook thing against the king here. So I'm just going to move a little bit fast to get to the point where we have this position and then jump right to the next game. So at this point already, it's still an advantage for white. Why? Because he still has the opportunity of getting the 2 pawns against 0, while black has his own b pawn that can always be checked by the bishop on h7. So the game continued. Just going to make a couple of moves. It's very important white creates this pass pawn. These 2 pawns can be very deadly. So captures back, knight move, check, king moves, rook defends the pawn, king moves, bishop back. Very good move. Why is it a very good move? You know, when you have a bishop, you want to centralize your bishop. Yes, centralizing the bishop gives the bishop a very wide scope of things it can do. So king moves. I'm just going to rush this real quickly. and trying to get to the point where we had the, okay, this is the position. Now, at this point, it's really going to be hard for white to get a win because the rook, bishop against the rook mostly is a draw. Mostly is a draw, unless black finds himself in not so cool position. So I'm going to just go a couple more moves further to show the final position where the game was agreed a draw, and then move to the next position. And one thing, and I know one thing, Bomo, is that he definitely learns from this game. When you have an advantage, you have to make it count. You cannot just, sleep and drag your feet and all that. So, yeah. At the end of the day, this game went to around 107 moves. No, 111 moves. What am I talking about? 117 moves. And finally, the game ended in a draw. Well fought game by Bomo. And I'm sure he's looking back at this game and saying, you know what, I should have won this game. I had this chance, I had that chance, but I couldn't make it work. Don't worry about that, Bomo. There is always another time. So let us jump right to the next game. The next game was a very lucky game for our FIDE master, Bimbo, Abimbola Oshifo. What am I talking about? Abimbola Oshifo, yes. Abimbola was on the black side of the sort of course system, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the position was kind of even to the point where I think Bimbo got a little bit over ambitious and messed up the position I was just losing. But unfortunately, his opponent um, responded back by giving him a whole rook, and game was pretty much over from that point on. Nothing much to talk about, so I just had to read out these moves. Pawn push, um, rook to e8. Of course, in the beginning of a game, you always want to keep all your pawns in the center. You want your pieces to fight for the central squares, which is what they're doing right now. So whoever has some kind of advantage in the center always wins the game, or always have a possibility of winning the game. So we have this position where there are so many contacts in the middle of the board. So let's keep going. Now the pawn capture stats. And one thing I'm going to say about pawn captures or piece captures, anytime you make a capture, either it's a pawn capture or a piece capture, or let me put it this way, anytime you make an exchange, always know that you get something from it. Because if you don't, your opponent is definitely, I'm going to say that again, your opponent is definitely going to get something. So anytime there's an exchange of pawns or pieces, always ask yourself, what are you getting from these exchanges? So let's keep going. Captures on d4, knight to e4, bishop to b4, attacking the rook on e1, captures check, knight captures back, rook captures, queen captures, and bishop to c4. White says, you know what? I want to capture your pawn here, but I don't want you to capture mine. Bishop to c4. But if we look at this game, do we think anyone has any kind of advantage? I don't think so. It's not been such an eventful opening for white. What I mean by that is nothing spectacular white has done. So black is pretty much even, black pretty much equalized. And so white really cannot boast of any kind of advantage in this position. But let's keep going. b5 was played, bishop to f1, and bishop to b7, attacking the pawn on e4. Now I don't think it's possible to save this pawn. So white has to be looking to lose the pawn on d5 to get the pawn on d4. Knight takes pawn on d4, protects that. Why can't they just capture the pawn back? Well, the reason is if you take the pawn on d5, we have two pieces attacking e5, and then white is just going to be a pawn up. Not such a good idea for black there. So protects the pawn, a4. Now the idea of a4 is to still threaten to capture the pawn. And if he captures back, he can always play c4, protecting his pawn, threatening to win the pawn on a4 because he has two attacking it. Very smart move by white. So let's keep going. Captures. c4, tempo on the bishop, bishop e3, very important. Get all your pieces in the game. We always do that. Get all your pieces in the game. Bishop to c8, queen takes a4. I think at this point it's fair to say white is winning. Yes. I think white has an extra pawn. His pieces are more active. Yeah, his pieces are more active, and there are some spots in black's position black really has to worry about. Could be a weakness. C6 is something has to worry about. F5 is absolutely something has to worry about. G5. So black is a little bit, it's a little bit being pushed back. So let's see how this game continued. Bishop d7, getting a tempo on the queen. Queen a5, putting pressure on the bishop. Bishop goes to b6, queen b4, threatening the move c5. Just pretty much forcing all black's pieces backwards. So he plays knight to e, knight to g4, attacking e3. He plays c5. Now he plays queen to d, e5, threatening checkmate. We always have to look out for all these things. That's a sneaky move. He says, not today. Sorry, people, I can't let you do that. So takes on e3, takes back on e3. Bishop captures. Now, I'm not so sure why Bomo made this move. I mean, was it losing? I don't know. Because what if the bishop simply goes back here? I mean, rook takes is possible, bishop takes is possible. Well, yeah, it still looks bad. It looks pretty bad for black. So Bimbo captured on c5. Andrew captured back. Queen takes check. King moves. Bishop to f5. Queen e3. Anytime you're up in the game, you want to make sure reduce that ability for your opponent to wage any kind of war against you. Bishop e4 check. Bishop g2 was played. Bishop takes. Queen, king takes. Queen check. Knight back. I mean, white is a piece of for absolutely no competition for black. But the game is about to change very quickly. Let's see what captures the pawn back. H6 is a very important move, especially when you still have the 3 pawns protecting your king. We're always told that protect your king with your pawns, fine. But when you get to the end game, you have to make sure one of these pawns has been moved to stop or discourage your opponent from any kind of background checkmate. So rook to d1, centralizing the rook. Queen to b5, threatening the pawn on b2. Queen to d5, looking to exchange the queen and also protecting the pawn on b2. Queen to b7. Rook e2, defending. Oh, he played rook f3 actually, defending the knights. And what else? Pretty much defending the knight. So rook to c8. Now this is possible. Rook to c8. This is possible. Rook to c2 is possible. The check is possible. And I think this is where Andrew blundered. He played rook to c3, losing the rook immediately to queen takes check. And after this point, he gladly resigned. Very unfortunate loss for the IM4 from Zambia, but of course a very welcome win for the FM from Nigeria. So we're done with the games from the men's section. Well, the men's games, not the men's section, because in this tournament we have a male and a female players playing together on the open section. And why is this? Unfortunately, some of the members of the team were not given visas. Some of the female members and some of the male members. Very unfortunate situation. And we hope in the future this doesn't happen. Nigerian Chess Federation did everything they can to make sure everything went well. But at the end of the day, these things were really out of their hands. So let's get right to the next game that was played by the ladies. So I'm going to go and start with the game Quick Pen. Quick Pen pretty much, I don't know what really happened in this game, but well, let's see. It was a c4 opening. C4 was played. Knight f6. Well, another thing I have to say here is I heard some comments people made about this game that, the bottom line is she is playing somebody stronger, more experienced. Even sometimes when you have an edge over a top player or somebody that is much higher than you, so sometimes you tend to mess up. But those messing up at the period where you're really getting experiences, it's going to get to a point where you won't be able to do those messing up again, and you will be able to get those wins. So let's go right back into this game. E5. Now we have the English opening on the board. Knight to c, knight f3, knight to c6, e4. This is a very interesting line Magnus Carlsen normally plays. Sometimes after this e4, he goes with the move g3 and bishop to g2. One thing is if you're good in chess, you can play anything. And being good means you understand the game. Bishop c5, very logical move. Putting pressure on f2, especially when we have the c4 and the e4 pawn moves. That means the d4 could be an outpost, yes. So knight takes e5, that's the top move by the engine. Knight takes e5. And the idea is to pretty much get rid of the pawns Black has in the center. White is going to have a pawn in the center at some point in time. So knight takes e5, knight captures back, d4, about to get the pawn back. And then we have bishop to b4 here, creating a pin on the king. So for example, if the knight pawn takes, which is what happened, you get your pawn back. And queen to f3. After queen f3, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop to a5. So let us check out this game real quickly and see what's happening. Black's pretty much still has a very nice pawn structure. Nothing has really been tampered with. And of course, he needs to keep his king safe, get his bishop in the game, and Black is looking good. Well, White is not looking so good when you look at the pawn structure. We have the double pawns on the c file. And those double pawns are also isolated pawns. And of course, it's very difficult for White to start to develop his pieces to the best squares because he has to watch out for stuffs like that. But one thing we can say is, looking at this position, White definitely has a slight pull. Why? Because he has a lead in development. I would say that, yes, he has a lead in development. So let us see how the game continues. Bishop to a3, very important move. Stopping the king from castling, and then after bishop to e2 castles, White is looking really good. And now d6 is actually not going to be such a cool move because we can just take. If we take back, we can just play queen e4 is possible, queen d5 is possible, attacking the two. So many things are possible here. Queen g5, that's a very sharp move. I don't know what the idea of that move is. Probably trying to take, which I think is very dangerous, especially because your king is still on e8. The square around your king is not looking so good. The king actually has just one move. So h4 was played. Very nice way to continue. So queen takes check. King steps to d2. Now this is getting very interesting. And White has the bishop developed. The queen is developed. The bishop can get into the game very soon. So can the rook get into the game. So can the other rook get into the game. And Black has two pieces. The queen is the most active. Bishop, yeah, bishop is kind of active, but not a whole lot is going on. The king is stuck in the center. We have the two rooks out of the game. This has to be a good position for White. So let us see how the game continues. Queen check, simply steps back. Now we're going to have a rook on e1. And this king is looking really bad. After rook, king to c2. Queen goes back to e5, stopping the rook check on the e file. It simply plays rook to d1. What's the point? The idea is the double attack on d5. And that's why anytime you're playing a game of chess, always look for the threats. Always look for something to do. Always look for something to keep your opponent busy. Find them something to do. So rook d1 was played. d6. Rook d5, I want to win your piece. Either this or that. What do you do? Bishop check. Now, we cannot block the check because queen takes c3 is just crushing. So what do? We got to get out of the check. Now, the queen is under attack. The rook is under attack. Both cannot be defended. And if the queen moves away too far, the bishop also could get under attack. So queen goes to e1. And what's the threat here? There is a check here, but I can simply just stop the check. Or there's another check on c2. So that means we can't let this bishop leave. So what does black do? Oh, white said, I'm just going to simply exchange the queen, win a piece, and then just, milk the position, get the extra, you get the extra piece to work. Rook starts to put pressure on b7. And king moves to c2. What's the point? So that the rook can just get right back into the game. And I think at this point, there's really no need to go all the way to the end. Black is down a piece with absolutely no compensation. And it's just a matter of time when this game will be won by white. So I'm just going to try to show the final position before we go to the last game that was played, which was the game by Torishek. I actually had a feeling, well, I actually felt Torishek would have held in that game because I was following the game throughout and I really liked the way she played. I think after the rook FB1, I think that's where I stopped looking at the game. But I saw a very nasty plan for our opponent. But well, I'm going to get back to the game real quickly. So, I mean, yeah, it's just a matter of time when black, yes, so another piece down. Black loses this position. Okay, let's go right to the game, Torishek. To me, I think this is apart from the game Bomo played, this is the most solid game of this round for me. I mean, like I said, I followed the game throughout and I really like the way Torishek played in this game. So let us see what happened in this game. Let us see what happened. Let us see what happened. Torishek had black white pieces d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, c3. Interestingly, this is one of the lines I played in Blitz when I'm playing Blitz or Bullet. I've been playing a lot of Bullet lately. Guys were like, "What's wrong with it?" Nothing really. It's not something I do normally, but I don't know. I just play a lot of Bullet lately. So c3, it kind of white has a very solid position, which is almost unpregnable. White black can't do much about it. But at the same time, having a solid position is not enough. You have to do something to get to your opponent. So after the move c3, h3 was played. Of course, the idea of h3 is to stop it, that the bishop, mostly the bishop, from going to g4. Another reason why h3 is good in some situations is when this bishop comes to f4, we can always pull it back to h2 so that the knight doesn't go after it and get it. So bishop f4, castles, e3, c5, bishop e2. Now I'm going to say this, and I think I've said this in some of my videos. Anytime you're playing against the fianchetto, your bishop is best on either e2 or c4, not on d3. Because on d3, you're not really going to have a lot going on. Except you don't have one of the pawns here, and then you can just weaken the position with the move h4, h5. Right, so let's get back to the game. Knight bd7, castles, b6, knight bd2. This is a kind of slow build-up. Get all your pieces to good squares and then, push forward from there. I still like white's position here. Personally, I'll just pretty much throw this knight here, pretty much play a4, a5 to weaken this pawn, bishop to b5, rook to e1. Just try to force black to push some pawns and then start to put pressure on those pawns. So bishop b7, knight e5, a6, a4, I like that. Knight to e8, not such a good move. Knight takes d7, that's a good move by Torishek. Queen captures back. Queen b3, good move. Putting pressure on b6, putting pressure on b7, on d5. Let us see how white meets this. Black. Queen c6, knight f3. I'm not so sure with knight f3. I would have preferred bishop f3. Just trying to face that queen. What's the point of bishop f3? I'm trying to play c4. Yes. If you take, I'm going to take back. You're going to have to get away from the queen. I'm going to take that. My knight is on c4. Queen is on b3. I'm going to take that, and black is looking not so good. While white is looking good. But let's get back to the game. Knight f3, c4, queen to c2, knight to d6. I'm going to say something real quickly before we continue. Anytime you have a pawn chain, a fixed pawn chain, these are fixed pawn chains, right? You have to look to break the pawn chains, because when you get to break the pawn chains, it gives your pieces more mobility. I still like white's position here. If you look at the pieces individually, the knight here is better than this knight. The bishop here is better than this bishop. I like the bishop here better than this, because this is not doing a whole lot. Well, apart from the fact it's protecting this pawn, which is not really what you want to do. So what should be a plan for white here? I still think this bishop belongs to f3. Maybe knight e5, f3, rook a, e1. Maybe to get the pawn push in. Maybe. But that's what I think. Another thing black could also look to, white could also look to this to play b3. You know, to try to capture back, and then you could look to get this pawn move. And then by playing b3, you could also use the b file against the black's position. So let's get back to the game. Oh, b3 was played, b5 captures back, knight to d2, f6, rook fd1, e5, bishop to h2, bishop. Yeah, I saw this plan, rerouting the bishop to a very nice diagonal. I saw this plan. How does white meet this plan? I can pretty much move my queen to b2 with the idea of queen to b6, and white is fine. I tell you, white is fine in this position. Bishop to g4. I don't like the move bishop to g4. I don't like the move bishop to g4. Why don't I like bishop to g4 more? You know, this pawns on the light squares has to count for something, especially when you have a bishop on the light square as well. So I don't really fancy this move. I would have preferred the queen b2 with the idea of queen b6. Because if I can get rid of the queen, then I can move my bishop to f3 to put pressure on b7, on d5. And of course, get rid of this queen. Remember this, I'm going to also have a rook in my opponent's position, putting pressure immediately on the knight. So a lot of things change very quickly. Bishop to e4, f5, bishop to e2, f4. Now this is where I think black is starting to get some steam. The two rooks here are not really doing anything. As well, I'm going to say the rook on a1. The rook on b1 is still doing something, not a whole lot, but yeah. And there seems to be a lot of activity in the center right now. Is white ready to be able to meet those activities? I'm not really sure, because now once the bishop can move out, the rooks here connected, there's going to be a problem around it, and especially with the king being on g1, white has to be very, very uncomfortable in this position. Queen to b2, bishop f5. No, Torishe, no, Torishe, no. You have to force exchanges here. You have to force exchange, because even if he moves back, you know, can you even move your rook to, says bishop f3? Bishop f3 is possible, trying to, you know, if he takes check, take that. Yeah, you have to, Trisha, this is not the time to play quiet girl. You have to go fire for fire, you know, because the moment you start backing up, it's going to be tough to stop backing up, especially when you're playing a more experienced player, high rated player. Trisha, you kind of line to that. Okay? But let's keep going. Rook e1. Yeah, that's the problem. See, white has been losing ground by the withdrawal of the pieces. When you withdraw your pieces, your opponent brings their pieces in, you're going to have difficulties. That's the problem. Now all of a sudden the tables are turned. Black is looking good. So white has to be like, where did I get this wrong? Where did I get this wrong? So let's keep going. Queen to c1. Looking at white's pieces, they don't look good. Come on. They do not look good compared to black's pieces. They don't look good. So definitely white has gone wrong somewhere. They don't look good. But the good thing about chess is you won't learn from our games, learn from the mistakes. You know, you have to be able to look at a position and give a very good account of what you think is happening, and then respond accordingly. And it's a first time control, so I don't know. We will have to just wait to find out why Torsia went the way she did. So captures on e3, captures back, knight e4. Now, there, that's his problem. Captures back, captures on e5, queen puts pressure on the weak pawn on e3. I think maybe you should play bishop f3. Is bishop f3? Okay, knight e4 is possible, right? Bishop f3 was played. Knight goes back to g5, attacking the knight. Oh no, knight. Bishop to d1. Rook a to e8. Not the best move. Bishop d3 would have been a very much stronger move. Just pretty much trying to paralyze black's position. So rook a e8, h4. Another not so good move. Whenever you're being attacked, try not to make pawn moves unless you have no choices. Because for every pawn move you make, you're going to create more weaknesses that your opponent can exploit. I understand the fact this knight is a nuisance, being a big pest because you're trying to move your knight to f3 and then maybe d4, but this knight is really bothering you. But yes, we have to weigh those pawn moves, especially when we know these pawns don't make a backward move. So knight goes back, knight f3. Yeah, exactly my thought. Knight captures with the bishop. Bishop captures, knight takes, rook takes. And of course, this is just bad for whites. We have a backward pawn on e3 that can be blockaded. We have a weak pawn on c3. We have another weak pawn on a4. Okay. There's a weak pawn on h4. It's a lot of weaknesses for white. So now, even instead of being on the offense, white is going to be on the defense for a long time. And it doesn't really help matters when your queen is in between your rooks. Your rooks are not connected. So pretty much the plan for black is to put pressure on this pawn especially and just try to do something about it. Meanwhile, white has to look for ways to get position together. I don't like that move. Bishop to e4. I would have preferred I would have, yeah, I like bishop to d3. I like bishop to d3. And I could also play rook queen e7, putting pressure here, threatening rook here, putting pressure on e3. So bishop e4 captures back. Wow, this is tough. Queen d2. Yeah. So another pawn goes down. So apart from the fact that white stands very passive in this position, 1 2 3 4 1 2 3, white is down material against a more experienced player. All of those factors don't play very well for white. But on the other hand, you could always fight. So what would have been a good plan? I mean, this is a weak pawn. Go for the pawn. Okay, try to keep them busy. One thing about rook pawn ending is even sometimes when your pawn or rook 2 pawns up in a rook pawn ending, it does not necessarily mean you're going to win the game. Okay, so let's keep rolling. Let's see how this game continues. So rook takes, rook f1, trying to ease the pressure. Says no, I'm not doing that. He plays rook f3. That's not bad, but I would have preferred rook here. Create a threat. You want to capture that pawn. You can capture this pawn and get to the 7th rank. Even if you're down a pawn or two, you have some compensation because once your rooks get to the 7th rank, you could always get a perpetual attack on the king. So let's keep going. Rook f3, rook to e4, and now I see you have to do something, either this or this. You have to do something. You're not going to be able to defend for too long, Torisha. You're not going to be able to defend for too long. King here, not such a good move. Yeah. Finally, a move that looks good was played. Why do I say that? Because there's a pressure on d5, there's a pressure on that square. I don't know if that's a good move, but one thing about chess is, there's so many things about chess I like to talk about. When you're behind, when you're worse, you want to defend. When you're ahead, you want to attack. If you're worse and you try to get unnecessary active, like a rook f5, your position is going to come down very, very fast. So we're going to have to round up this real quickly. Look here, Black says, you know what? It's not fair for my opponent to be making all these bad moves. Let me try to complementing bad moves. I'm going to make my own bad move as well. Rook f8. Not a good move. Rook check here would have just been courteous. Rook check here. Because if a capture pawn takes on, wow. So you're just going to force the exchange of pieces, go into one rook, king, pawn ending, and the game is just pretty much over. So, but this didn't happen. So rook f8 was played, captures back, and king g1, queen comes right back to the pawn on e3. Finally she made this move. I was really hoping she made longest time ago. In chess you have to learn when you're behind and how to get some counterplay. Getting counterplay is different from getting unnecessarily aggressive. We don't want to do that. So rook goes back, queen to e d4, captures back. Black really didn't play the best moves to exploit the advantage he has. Gave Torish a lot of opportunity. Like I said, in rook pawn ending, nothing is certain in rook pawn ending. Nothing. Even when you pawn down, you can still find a way to get some drawing chances. So I would actually have preferred rook coming to this square, because you're not just threatening to take this pawn, but you're also ready to check and take that pawn. Even if your opponent gets the pawn to the g3, take the pawn on g2, your king is close enough to stop the pawn from moving. Rook pawn ending are so unpredictable. So that's how we have to learn our rook pawn endings. Check, takes, moves, take. And this is the problem here. The king is just pretty much going to stroll inside. This is a dangerous pawn. This is a dangerous pawn. And that's another thing I'm going to say this, and before I stop the video. It makes a lot of sense to go for this pawn, for the h pawn. Why? You don't want to have black to have two connected pawns. So instead of going for the a pawn, go for the h pawn. As long as the pawns are isolated, and as long as they're isolated, it's so easy to find a way around them. But when they're connected, it's more dangerous. And I think that's exactly what happened here. And all of a sudden, we have two very dangerous pawns. It's hard for black to do anything. I mean, it's hard for white to do anything about these pawns. I mean, yeah. Okay. So I think we are going to end our recap for the 7th round of the Chess Olympiad. This was a match between Nigeria and Zambia. Nigeria, I give you thumbs up. Nice. It was a nice effort. Bomo did pretty well. Bimbo, nice swindle. We want more swindle. A win is a win. And quick pen, keep it together. Let these people make mistakes and then punish them. Don't go all out. Just take it easy. Let the game come to you. And Torishe, I need to call you. We need to talk. All right, people. Thanks for being there. Please comment on this and let us know what you think. Definitely, I'm going to do a recap for the 8th round, the 9th round, and the remaining rounds of the game. Nigerians, and of course, if it's possible, do some more recap for some of the other countries. So this is International Master Oladapo again. Budapest Chess. See you all soon. Take care and God bless.